Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining me for the Esoteric Moon Gathering. I'm Dottie Lamoureux, your host. And my hope for you is that you'll walk away from all of these conversations with some wisdom and perhaps some rituals and practices to help you access your inner knowing and trust and use your inner navigation system as we learn to walk through this new world. I'm really thrilled today. I have Julie Bjelland with me, and she's going to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart, highly sensitive people. Her talk is entitled Sensitive Empowerment, Reduce Overwhelm, and Learn to Love Who You Are Authentically. Julie is a sensitivity psychotherapist, global speaker, and author. Her online resource, Sensitive Empowerment, has helped highly sensitive people, or HSPs, around the world reduce their challenges, access their gifts, and discover their balance, inner strength, and significant value. Known for her ability to give people a sense of true support, Julie is featured on national media regularly, and she's on a mission to empower sensitive people to live their best lives. Julie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Dottie. It's a wonderful subject to be talking about.
Yes, it is. Thank you. I'm wondering if you can tell me more about the trait of high sensitivity.
Yes, and for people kind of new to learning about it, about 20% of the population has this trait, and it's an innate trait, not a disorder. And it's equal in gender. About 70% of us are introverts and 30% extroverts. There's so many wonderful things to learn about it that hopefully we'll be covering today a little bit. There's so many gifts in a person who's highly sensitive. It's actually scientifically known as sensory processing sensitivity, but it's been widely talked about as the highly sensitive person, or you'll hear me refer to it as HSP. So there's just so much to share with you about. I mean, this trait evolved as a survival strategy of the population. We have brain differences. There's really things about us that are, we're very gifted, and I kind of call it, we have a supercomputer brain, and we take in a lot of information, very intuitive, and part of what we need to really learn about is how to balance the sensitive nervous system in a world that isn't always set up for sensitive people. So being excited to talk about that today.
Awesome. Yes, that balance can be really difficult to find, especially as we're filming this, it's the end of May. And so we're still in the thick of all of the new developments. And it's hard, I think, on especially highly sensitive, empathic people to create their boundaries, right? What kind of advice would you, or guidance would you recommend or give somebody that might be struggling with that at this time?
Well, I think that we are deep feelers in the world, and there's a reason why we are deep feelers. And if you can work on the kind of balance that you need as a sensitive person, because I like to think about the nervous system as being like a container, and 80% of the population might just be putting, 3 cups into that container that they need to process on a daily basis. But HSPs might be putting hundreds of cups into that container. And that gives us a really deep knowing. But the main issues that cause the challenges is not understanding how to process what's in that container and not slowing down enough to do it. That we have a certain kind of way we need to care for ourselves. I like to imagine HSPs as like orchids, the orchid flower, because it might take a little kind of special care, but when it gets the right special care, it really blooms brilliantly. And that's how I like to think of HSPs, because we're kind of like orchids. We can totally bloom brilliantly in the world, but we do need a certain kind of care that's different than 80%.
I love that analogy or that metaphor. That's beautiful. It's true. Once they do have their right light and the right water and the right medium, they just keep on giving us beautiful, beautiful flowers. Yes. If somebody's wondering if they're a highly sensitive person, how would you know?
Well, I actually have a sensitivity quiz on my website. It's free. And so that's one place you could go, sensitiveconnection.com. And it has 45 of the main traits. And so you'll see if you fit into that. and most likely if you're questioning it, you might be, because a lot of empaths are sensitive, have this trait. And it's just an incredible, like the thing I can share that's the most really just transforms your life is to really learn a lot about the trait and to understand that you experience the world in a different way and that you actually are needed and you're very valuable. So it's like if we can lift off that layer of overwhelm, we can access all those amazing gifts that come with this trait. This is extra knowing. I mean, it's really an incredible thing to learn about it. And I think most of us that really start to dive down into learning about this trait, it just transforms us. I know for myself, I cried learning about the trait because it was like, wow, there's people that are like me and there's a reason I'm like this and that these are actually gifts in the world. And so a lot of my messages for HSPs is really learn about the trait, spend time with other HSPs, learn tools that help you really navigate having a sensitive system, thinking about what's going into that container and what can kind of drain it out. And as long as you find that balance, you really can access such an incredible amount of gifts that are so needed in the world, and you're so valuable.
What are some of those gifts?
Well, if you think about, I mean, we're taking it, we can read micro expressions and body language that 80% of the population miss. We can read energies off of people that other people miss. I mean, there's a knowing that is incredible. We have more activation in the insula part of our brain, which gives us a very intense ability to have like a strong level of consciousness, which really matches up with the research about this trait, that if you give HSPs the right kinds of information and tools, they really soar in the world, even more so than 80% who don't have this trait. And it's important to understand that once you kind of find that balance, so we recommend things like 2 hours a day of alone time, 1 full day off a week. And we're talking about really connecting to yourself internally, getting to know yourself, being able to slow down. Think about that nervous system as being a motor, and those body cues are really strong within us. I mean, we're some of the most caring, compassionate people in the world. When you see somebody jump up to help someone, it's most likely an HSP that is doing that. And that is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I know personally when I learned that this term HSP or highly sensitive person, I thought I was so relieved. That was my first, I was like, oh, there isn't something wrong with me, because I grew up hearing a lot, why are you crying? Stop being so sensitive. And that's so limiting and can be quite painful. So when you know that it's okay and in fact a gift, it's, oh, thank goodness.
Yes, and HSPs make some of the best leaders and healers of the world. I mean, we were the healers and the guides, and if you think about living on land, and we were the ones that could tell, like in our tribe, we were relied on to know extra information. Is this a safe place for my tribe? Is this a good place to find food? Can I trust that other tribe? I mean, these are things, because we have this extra information, we often assume that everybody has that information. But one thing to understand is 80% don't have the same level of this kind of supercomputer brain that you have. And you can be incredibly creative. Some of the best and most talented people in the world are HSPs. And it's really about finding that balance so that you can uncover all those gifts that are there.
Yeah, awesome. And what would you say are some of the challenges then of being a highly sensitive person?
Yeah, and those tend to vary based on the spectrum of sensitivity. So those of us that are really high up there on my scale, like myself, have even more sensitivity with, even you can think of sensory sensitivities. We can get overwhelmed more easily, like in crowds when there's a lot of bright lights or loud sounds or a lot of things going on at once, because you're just taking in so much all around you. So definitely overwhelm is a big one. We see a lot of high stress, anxiety, depression. What's really interesting though about this, about the research, because there's a lot of research about this, it's a scientifically proven trait. So there's a lot of research about it. And we show that children that are raised in environments where they were not supported in their sensitivities and given what they needed, they're actually more likely to have anxiety and depression. But what's exciting to me about that is that when they are given the right amount and the right types of support as a sensitive child, they're less likely to have anxiety and depression, even less so than somebody without the trait. And that shows you a lot, because if you can sort of create the right environment for your children, your grandchildren, as well as yourself as an adult sensitive person, you can really thrive in the world. And so it really has a lot to do with what's happening in the nervous system. So if I'm going out and I have like a busy day and then I have another busy day and I've just got so much going on, now my nervous system is overflowing and too full. That's going to make me feel more anxious, and my stress levels would be higher. I kind of like to think about the brain as having two parts, the emotional brain and the cognitive brain. And for HSPs, our emotional brain can be more activated, and that kind of makes the cognitive brain go to sleep, which is where we have facts and rational thought and the ability to support the emotional brain. So a lot of my work is focused on how do we wake back up that cognitive brain so that it can support the emotional brain, because that's the part that says to me like, oh, I think I'm really feeling kind of tired and depleted. I need to do some self-care. That comes from my cognitive brain. And if I'm too overactive in my emotional brain, you might see anger, bursts, high irritability, lack of patience. And what's interesting is your sensitivities even increase depending on how full your nervous system container is. So if I'm keeping myself pretty balanced, my sensitivities are actually less, versus if I'm skipping my self-care, my downtime, then my sensitivities are going to be stronger. So we actually have some control over that, which I think is really exciting.
That is exciting. It's hopeful and helpful to know. Yeah, you've touched on it, but what are some of the tools and tips that help?
Yeah, I have a couple of favorites that I love sharing. There's so much good information, but to give a couple of quick tips to your listeners would be one of my favorites is a breath technique. And it's very fascinating to me that we can communicate with our brain. We can actually activate calming centers intentionally that deactivate stress centers because they cannot be activated at the same time. I mean, how exciting is that? For myself, that was very exciting to know that I could activate calming centers. And because when we've activated that sort of alarm bell system and you're noticing your heart is racing and maybe you're getting really anxious or stressed about something, your brain has interpreted that as you're in danger. It doesn't know the difference between real threats and perceived threats. So even criticism can be a threat to a sensitive person, as we try so hard to get things done right that when we're criticized, it can be really difficult for us. And so you breathe in for the count of 4, you hold it for 2, and you exhale for 7. And you do that about 5 to 7 cycles. And what happens with that long, slow exhale is that you don't breathe like that if you're actually in danger. If you're in danger, you're breathing short, shallow breaths. Your oxygen is going into your muscles to prep you for fighting or running. And so you're communicating directly to your brain, I'm not in danger. I don't want you to send out all these alarm bells. And so by doing that slow exhale, you instantly reduce your heart rate, which wakes back up your cognitive brain. And it's a skill that you get better at. And I suggest keep using it anytime you feel nervous. The earlier you use it, that you can actually prevent the release of adrenaline and cortisol and different stress hormones just by using this breath technique. And that's huge.
That is huge.
Right?
Yeah, because the release of those hormones, doesn't it lead to a lack of digestion and just so many things happen as a result.
Yes, because you don't need digestion when a lion is about to attack you. So right. Your body actually shuts down what it considers non-essential stuff. And that's why I know for myself, if I get really anxious, I instantly feel it in my stomach. Mm-hmm. And long-term, short-term health impacts are huge. If you can start to train yourself to not release adrenaline and stress hormones, I mean, that's huge for health benefits. And you can teach this to children and teens. I mean, it's accessible to you at any time. And I've had so many HSPs share with me that they have found it really helpful.
Yeah, it is helpful. Breathing's amazing. Just simple breathing. And I just want to summarize that again. It's breathe in for 4, hold it for 2, exhale for 7. And you do that how many times again?
About 5 to 7 cycles.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what other techniques do you have?
Well, I also find that there's a self-compassion, a 3-step technique that is incredibly important and helpful, because to be able to support ourselves through suffering, we first have to acknowledge and validate the suffering. And that's a really powerful thing as a sensitive person, because a lot of us have spent a lot of time in our life being invalidated for the feelings that we have, which really just makes it worse. I kind of call that like adding 1,000-pound weight to a 5-pound emotion when we're having that emotion be judged. So the first step of that 3-step process is you can either put your hand on your chest, or you can give yourself like a hugging sensation, because you're actually activating proprioceptors that are calming when you do that. And so that first step is you acknowledge the suffering. Find the words for what you're feeling. I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling worried. You know, whatever emotion that you're having, find the word, because in fact, finding the word starts to turn back on that cognitive brain. And instantly, it cuts the intensity by about 50% instantly by doing this touch and the acknowledgement of the emotion. Really powerful. And the second step is to normalize and validate that emotion, which is really important. Normalizing might sound something like, okay, other people, especially sensitive people, would probably be having a really hard time with this emotion right now too. And the validation is, it makes sense to me that I'm feeling this way. This is a really powerful thing to validate what you feel. You will instantly start to feel soothed when you do that. And we are allowing the emotion. We're not telling it that it's wrong. And that's a very important piece to managing intense emotions, because we don't want to add that 1,000-pound weight to it. So in the third step, I've kind of adapted this technique from Kristen Neff, who is a researcher, and she's devoted so many years to how, self-compassion is one of the best things you can do for your mental health. And she's done such amazing research in this area. So that third step is then I like to add in, what do I need right now? I'm feeling this intense feeling right now. What do I need right now in this moment that would support me? Do I need a hug? Do I need to journal? Do I need to talk to somebody? Do I need to go outside? Do I need a glass of water? Do I need to take a break? Like, you're allowing yourself to check in. How am I doing and what do I need? Because that is part of soothing yourself. And it is incredible when you have an intense emotion and you are supporting that emotion, you reduce the intensity and it's bearable. When you have an intense emotion and it's not being supported and you're telling yourself it's wrong or you shouldn't be having it, now you've just expanded that intensity, and that's what makes it unbearable. So as a sensitive person, this is something that, it helps so much. And you get better at it. It's a brain training skill. So you're better at it the 10th time than the first time you do it. I know when I first started, I did not feel self-compassion. And I find it so fascinating that this population of people were so compassionate with others and yet lack a lot of self-compassion. So it makes it really important.
Yeah, that's such an interesting aspect. I always think that, like, if it was my best friend in front of me telling me these things or expressing these feelings, what would I say? And then when it's me internally, it's such a different experience. It's very interesting. Do you know if there's science for that? Like, why we can have so much compassion for somebody else and not ourselves?
I think that my theory about it, because I've researched this trait for so many years and worked with HSPs all over the world, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, because this trait evolved as a survival strategy, we needed a group of people that worked really hard to get things right and get them done right the first time. Because imagine that we have these people that are really dedicated to doing things the right way. And I think that it creates a perfectionism problem. I think a lot of us have that I call it, we're sort of, using a perfectionist measurement stick against everything. It's like, is this perfect? Have I done it right? And then we fail every time if that's our measurement, because perfection doesn't exist. So I found that to be a real default setting in this population of people, that we have to be aware of that as our default, that's going to be something that we expect. We have really high expectations of ourselves. So we have to be careful and pay attention to that part a little bit so that the perfectionism doesn't take over.
Okay. That's a good tip.
And probably a lot of people are nodding as they listen to this.
Yeah, myself included.
Yeah, and I still pay attention to that stuff. And part of that advancement in that insula part of your brain is that you've got this ability to read body cues that is stronger than most people. And body cues give us information before our cognitive cues are there. And so I call it the icky feeling. If I get an icky feeling in my body, I need to pause and listen to what is that message in there? What's happened? What do I need to make it feel better? So I'm really kind of paying attention to that and getting to know my needs and what works and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. That's very helpful. Very helpful. And if you continue to find yourself in that perfectionist place, do you have recommendations for, even if you recognize it and you're like, okay, maybe I can bring that down a notch, and you still keep, coming back to perfection, do you have a way to talk yourself off that ledge?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying, paying attention to the body cues is a really huge one. And journaling too is a big one, because if you journal or talk to somebody, both of those things bring emotions through the cognitive brain. And it helps you kind of sort out, it's like, okay, that was a really big feeling I was having. Where's that coming from? And allows you to kind of pause and check in with yourself. And I know that a lot of HSPs, we need to be productive. We are busy all the time. We're taking in so much information that we really have to have a practice in place where we slow down and we pay attention. I really recommend meditation for sensitive people. That helps you build that pause and reflect ability that takes you away from reaction, because we tend to be reactionary. Because if our emotional brain has been activated and our cognitive brain's asleep, that's when we're very reactionary. And it's interesting because you can't even take in new information when you are reactionary. That's why people in arguments, they don't even hear what each other are saying, because your brain cannot take in information when you're reactionary. So the meditation really helps you over time, that practice of slowing down and going, what is that emotion I'm having right now? What's that about? What's it trying to say to me? What is it trying to tell me that I need? And really practicing that. So journaling, meditation, time in nature, that is huge for this population. It is medicine for every part of you. The more you can spend time in nature, it's absolutely huge. You must have found that for yourself, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. Yes. If I don't get out in nature, I start to feel very stuck in my emotional climate, my spiritual climate. All of it just starts to feel like, ugh. So yes, yeah, it's huge. It is.
Isn't it amazing how it really is like medicine for us? I have the same thing. If I need to be connected to nature every day in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And even if that's, plants in my own home, spending time outside, being, paying attention to the birds and the trees, and it's absolute medicine. It's a big part of our balance as sensitive people. I really think that we were meant to spend more time in nature. That's a part of who we are. Mm-hmm. And I've never had an HSP come to me and say, I spent a day in nature, I went for a walk in nature, and I don't feel any better. I've never heard that, right? It always makes you feel better.
It does always make you feel better. You never regret it.
Yeah.
Ever. I try to get out for a forest bath, is what I call them. I just love that term. I did not make that up. I can't remember where I learned that, but it's something that they actually do in Japan. They take groups out for forest baths, and I wish we did that here. but if I don't get a forest bath, I try to go once a week. I certainly feel the effects of not connecting to the trees and those negative ions. Just so it's medicine, like you say. Absolutely.
I love that, the term forest bath too. I instantly felt soothed when you said that. I was just like, because it feels so good, and it's one of the things that drains out what's in our that container I've been talking about. It doesn't take anything from you. It only gives, and it's just such an incredible piece of our well-being. We're really meant to be outside more, and I think our lives are so indoors that we lose a lot of that. So being intentional about that is a huge thing.
Yes. Yeah. And thinking about our ancestors, how we used to sleep on the ground and under the stars. And now, unless we go camping, we don't do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Take your shoes off, put your feet in the grass, in the earth. I mean, all of that is it's so beautifully grounding.
Yes. Yes. Very important. And the older I get, the more I realize that. I knew it on some level as a young person, but didn't really realize the full effects of those benefits. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. As when we get older, we start to pay a little bit more attention to what makes us feel good and do more of those things. And as HSPs, we've got such good information. When we stop enough, and pause enough to pay attention, that information is there. And really like you were saying, it's an ongoing process. It's a daily process to stay balanced. It's not like we reach some sort of a point that's like, okay, I'm all done with my self-care and I've reached empowerment and I'm done. It's a real conscious decision, isn't it, to continue to do the things that make you feel good.
it is. Yeah. And a gift. It's a gift. And you've touched on this, why highly sensitive people are so valuable in the world. Can you expand a little more on that?
Yes. Oh, I think about like if I had a doctor, a therapist, a leader, a manager, I would want them to have this trait because there is so much extra information there. And that's why we create some of the most amazing healers in the world too, and leaders is our HSPs, because there's so much valuable information inside of you and so many gifts. Like you can read people, you can know what they need. You can actually look at a situation and identify, like, if we did this and we did this and we did this over here, we could make it better. We could help this person. You have this amazing capacity in this supercomputer brain. And what I see every time is HSPs who are committed to their balance work that we've been talking a little bit about. They go out and fly in the world. They make it a better place. That's just who you are. Most of the HSPs I've ever worked with go out and, they create their own coaching programs. They go out and help people in their family. They start nonprofits. They do amazing things, even in activism, being able to combine the fact that you feel deeply about something into action is a really magical thing to put your energy in that way. And you're just so valuable and needed, and this is why you evolved this way, and you're needed. Your deep feelings and the way you are in the world is absolutely needed.
Awesome. And you may not, would you say that highly sensitive people are really connected to the moon?
Tell me more about that. Like, I'm interested actually to hear a little bit about, from your perspective of the summit and how you brought this together, even in the importance to you of the moon. What do you think about that?
I think yes, because when you said we combine the feeling deeply with action, it made me think sun and moon, because the feeling deeply is moon energy and action is sun energy. So I would think yes. I think highly sensitive people probably have a very good sense of moon energy, and because that's what informs our emotional climate and how we feel and why we feel. And so yeah. My
Yeah.
answer would be yes. I have
Yes.
no proof or science to back it up, but
Yeah, I agree too with you. I think that because we feel, we feel the energy are all around us, and there's much more information that we experience in that knowing, in that greater sense of knowing. And when you're not putting your energy points into self-criticism and self-judgment, and when you instead put the energy points into your balance and your, honoring your needs and who you are in the world, then all those amazing gifts become possible for you. And even getting information like that from the moon is going to be more, you're going to have more information if you can be open to that and to be able to balance your energy and what you give and what you receive. Also, we tend to be such givers and people pleasers and focus on other people's needs, that really making sure that you're focusing on what you need. I had to do that too. When I first started my work, I didn't even know what I needed. I was so focused on what everybody else needed that had to be part of my practice, was getting to know what I needed and what honored me. And finding that alignment in your life is so magical, because then you can go out and do all the things that you've really been called to do, like you're doing. You must be doing some good balance work in your life to create a summit like this, for example.
It's been a very long journey, but I'm learning, and it's still learning, but I am not afraid of self-care anymore. I used to think it was selfish and not necessary. It's, I would almost have put it in like an airy-fairy category. I don't like that term, but yeah, I've started to learn the value of self-care and how I can't give and help if I'm not taking care of myself. And you can't give from an empty cup. So I've got to fill my cup up and do the things that make me happy. And having conversations with people like you make me happy. So
yes, absolutely. I agree with you. It's like being able to shift that. I don't know where that information came from, but so many people have that same feedback in the world, that it's like, oh, you need to, I can do this, why can't you do this, or something. But we can't compare ourselves to the 80% that have a really different experience in the world. That's why I think HSPs need to be together. why I even created my sensitive empowerment community, was like to have HSPs be together, so that they could get to know. It's like, yeah, we all experience that, and that helps us kind of normalize and validate. It's like your magic and the gifts, your amazing gifts, will be there if you're doing the right self-care, and they're going to be covered up and inaccessible if you're not. So that in itself, to me, is a direct indication that self-care is the right way to go, because you share your gifts with the world when you are balanced.
yes, yeah. Well, gosh, Julie, I love your work. I do. I'm part of your sensitive empowerment community, and it's very enriching and rewarding. And I love getting emails from you, and the tools and skills that you share are just so valuable, so healing, so helpful. And I'm really grateful to you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And that comes from, all of the work comes from my own suffering in the past, and knowing what that's like, and really working hard. Like you were saying, we work hard at it, and sharing what we know works and what we know doesn't work. And that is my vision, is like lifting all these HSPs up in the world. And it excites me, because I can just imagine the amazing positive changes that can happen when we've really become empowered as sensitive people. That is just brilliant, and it excites me so much. So it's great to hear that kind of feedback.
Yeah. And I think that at this time in our history, as we get to know each other, or ourselves better, rather, get to know ourselves better, you'll start to see that lift get higher and higher, right? I imagine that's what you're feeling.
Yes. And you're probably saying too, it's like how kind and caring other sensitive people are. That's just who we are. And to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people like that is an important part of really loving and accepting who you are in the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your beautiful light and talents, and the wisdom that you shared today. Do you have, well, let's have you share about your beautiful free gift.
Yes, so we have the sensitivity quiz that's free for people on my website. I definitely recommend starting with that. And you can go to sensitiveconnection.com or juliebjelland.com. And also we have a discount code for your audience for my brain training program that I really highly recommend for HSPs. And it even includes 8 weeks in my sensitive empowerment community. And it walks you through some of the brain training, skills that really help you find balance. And I've put exactly what I know works into that program. So it walks you through the 8-week program. And I think you're going to be giving a special discount code to your audience that will give them a discount to that.
Yes, that'll be on your speaker page. Yes, easy to find. That is a really generous gift, and I hope people take advantage of it and run out and take that quiz right now if you're questioning your sensitivity. But I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably know. I would imagine that's helpful for parents too, right? If they're wondering maybe if their child is a highly sensitive, they could take that quiz and find out.
I just love parents inquiring about this, because this is, if a parent's inquiring about it for a sensitive child, we already know that you're setting up a supportive environment. Like, I think about my sons are teenagers and they're both highly sensitive, have this trait, and I cannot believe how emotionally balanced and healthy they are as teenagers, because they had the kind of support they needed. I didn't have that. So I definitely had a very difficult time in my younger years. I love that the research is showing that. So definitely parents, there's so much good information. I have a ton of information about this trait on my website too, a podcast and a blog, and just all kinds of free stuff too for everyone to just learn about the trait. It's going to change your life.
Awesome. Well, your passion is very visible, and that's awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Thank you for your time today. I'm very grateful that we got to have this chat, and it's been fun to hang out with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for reaching out and helping to spread awareness about this beautiful trait. So thank you for everything that you're doing in the world.
Oh, thanks, Julie. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. And I hope you learned as much as I did. And go take that quiz and take that class. You will not regret it. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.